Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us on this important first National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. My name is Julie Davis, and I'm a Vice President here at Trent University. To start off this event in the right way, I'd like to invite Ann Taylor, knowledge holder from Cove Lake First Nation, to begin with an opening prayer.
Miigwech Julie. Wewen bojo anin mang kwan dishnikas nigigganin dodem shkigamanganin donjaba. Michi Saagiig Anishnaabeg kwendao. Good morning, hello. My English name is Ann Taylor. My spirit name is Mang Kwan, which translates to loon feather. I am of the Otter clan. I am from Cove Lake First Nation, and I am a Michi Saagiig Anishnaabeg woman. I'm going to share my morning prayer with you. Shweminido, shkakamikwa, nokamis, shomis, wabanang, jaunang, ningabianang, giwednang, eshkidina waganonan, miigwachka minyeg nungum kishkat, get miigwachka minyeg nungum Jesus for bringing us light and warmth. Get kachimigwachka minyeg nbe, for that is our life source. Miigwachka minyeg gongeg mewan for bringing us fresh clean be, get noden for bringing us fresh clean air. Gegachimigwachka minyeg ake, for she sustains us. Miigwach kinagonango sag spimingeo, gedabik Jesus that watches over us. Gegachimigwachka minyeg chisin that we stand on, that we call shomas, for that is our foundation. Miigwach kinagawe siag, gigo sag, nido se sag, neshi sag, tigog, ge kinago mashkikiga minyeg. Miigwech for those that have been before us and have left these gifts for us to share and carry forward. And miigwech for those yet to come, for giving us that responsibility. A prayer of healing today for this earth, for the land, for the water, for the air, for our people, and for our languages. A prayer of love and respect, enlightenment, acceptance, peace, and hope. A prayer for those of us that need you to walk with us this day, to guide our steps, to allow us to feel your presence in our lives, and to remind us we walk this path together. A special prayer today for those little ones whose voices are finally being heard and are finally being brought to the light. A prayer for their families, a prayer for their communities, and a prayer of honor for those ones. Ashwen Mishnan Gashwemnido, Ashwen Mishnan Gashwemnido, Ashwen Mishnan Gashwemnido, Ashwen Mishnan Gashwemnido, Miigwech, 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 Nikonagana. Miigwech for allowing me to share that prayer with you.
Miigwech, Ann. So perhaps, like me, you're unsure what emotions to bring with you today. Sorrow for the lives, the language, and the land that has been lost. Maybe anger for the stripping away of culture of children from their families that this orange t-shirt represents. Perhaps you feel determination to have this be the beginning of a path that we're all walking on together with a stronger understanding of the truth. And perhaps you feel hope looking around here at the young people, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, who are coming here with a fierce determination to make this a country where all of the voices are heard. Today we're gathered on the treaty and traditional territory with the Michi Saagiig Anishnaabeg, proud and resilient people. And we're here today telling their story with an installation that makes sure everybody who comes to this campus knows that this is the treaty and traditional land of the Michi Saagiig Anishnaabeg. We're joined today by students, dignitaries, members of the faculty, staff, members of Cove Lake First Nation, who I'll introduce as they speak today. I want to acknowledge we're joined by MP Michelle Ferrari, Mayor Diane Tarian, Deputy Mayor and Mayor of Selwyn Township Andy Mitchell, and MPP Dave Smith gives his regrets. And President Leah Groke will introduce members of the Trent community. And I know everybody is here with a deep commitment to the work ahead of us. I do want to acknowledge somebody who was very instrumental in this focus of particular day, Elder Doug Williams, Giriga Migaze, from Curve Lake First Nation. Doug is a gentle and patient teacher who shares his wisdom and knowledge through stories of his life. But he's also spent his life working to regain all that he, his relations, and his community lost through colonialism and the treaty process. And in this work, he is quite rightly impatient. A few years ago, Trent created the Elders and Traditional Knowledge Keepers Council to help guide us in our efforts at truth and reconciliation and supporting Indigenous students to succeed. And I'd like to thank and acknowledge the Michi Saagiig members of that council for their time, wisdom, and advice. Melody Crow and Wayne Beaver from Alderville First Nation, Tom Cowie from Hiawatha First Nation, Doug Williams, Susie Taylor, and Ann Taylor from Curve Lake First Nation. When I began working with the council, they spoke of the importance of recognizing the local treaty, and they wondered why an Inukshuk was standing at the front of our campus. They challenged us to find a way to bring greater prominence to the Michi Saagiig. So we have respectfully moved the Inukshuk over to the East Bank. Trent has worked with Inuit elders and the local community to do that in the right way. And that sits proudly over there to welcome and acknowledge Inuit students and our Inuit community. And through the process of creating this installation, we've learned and we've committed ourselves to continuing to help others learn about Curve Lake, Hiawatha, Alderville First Nation, and the Mississauga-Scugog Island First Nation, those Michi Saagiig communities that have cared for this land for generations. I'd like to invite the Chief of Curve Lake First Nation and Trent alumnus, Chief Emily Wheatung, to share her thoughts on today.
Miigwech. It is with such great pride in our relationship that I'm here today. Trent University is the gold standard in what communication and inclusion should be in a relationship with a First Nation. Anytime we ask for information, it's shared. Any ideas we have are heard. We go back and forth on so many topics, so many times, and it's so incredibly what every relationship should be. As a Trent student, I felt enabled to go on to higher education and stay at home, which was so significant and important to me. And as any Indigenous student knows, being away from home is such a difficult time. Trent University continues regularly to find more and more ways to ensure that Indigenous students here are empowered to pursue that education in a good and meaningful way without feeling disconnected from our communities. And for that, we will forever be grateful. On a day when education, residential schools, Indian day schools are at the forefront of everybody's minds, Trent is empowering Indigenous students to take back control of our own education, not just in their inclusive community, the First Peoples House of Learning, and ensuring that we all have access to what we need, but in teaching and recognizing and respecting our traditional ways of knowing and including those in the academic sphere. And Trent has always been at the forefront of that innovation. So miigwech to Trent University for ensuring that this is remembered and ensuring that our students have the support that they need.
Thank you, Chief, for those words, and thank you for investing your time in this relationship and the work that we've done together. And I want to also thank you personally for the gift of this beautiful skirt, ribbon skirt in Trent green colors, so that I can wear it as part of the circle of friendship that has lasted for more than 50 years between Curve Lake First Nation and Trent University. So next, I'd like to invite the President and Vice Chancellor of Trent University, Dr. Leo Groark, to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Julie. And I want to say thank you, miigwech, to a whole lot of people who made this happen. But I first wanted to welcome and say miigwech to Elder Williams. It's great to be here with you, and we very much appreciate you coming out to share this moment with us. I was asked to recognize some key Trent people who are here. Deborah Cooper-Berger, the chair of the board, is with us. Our chancellor, Stephen Stone, and this is a rare occasion where we actually have two chancellors. Our former chancellor, Don Tapscott, and member of the board, Brian Cowie. Brian, if you could indicate. I did want to share just a couple of thoughts about the unveiling of this rock and this sculpture, and maybe I could pick up on some things that Julie said. I wanted to reflect on how complicated a process this has been, and really how long a process it's been to get to this place. Too long, but not really because of poor intentions. As Julie mentioned, one of the challenges was that 30, 40 years ago, Trent University put an inaugural at the entrance to our campus. And there was a good reason for doing that. Trent has important connections to the Inuit community, and those connections continue. But I would say it took about 30 or 40 years, not just for Trent, but for all of us to appreciate that institutions need to emphasize relations with local First Nations. And in the academic study of Indigenous studies, it all began as it was pan-Canadian, and it took 30, 40 years to appreciate that we need to have relations with our local First Nations. And I think we did come to that recognition, but that was complicated still because we wanted to treat the Inukshuk, which was put there in good intentions, in a careful way. We consulted with elders, we moved that, and then that prepared the way for us to work with the elders to prepare this particular monument. And I would just like to note that it took an awful long time. It took the work of a lot of people, but in a positive way. I think we have ended in a good place, except I'd want to say it's not the end. It shows how complex and how long it takes to accomplish these things, and this is just one step along the way to more reconciliation, to fulfilling the promises of truth and reconciliation. So mostly I'd like to say miigwech, and thank you to all the people who made it possible. It was a tremendous number of people. If I want to single anyone out, it would be the elders who have been so key to helping us along this path. So thank you, and miigwech, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Leo. And I would like to acknowledge members of the staff here who have, the staff and faculty who have provided invaluable advice, and it's really has been so important that all steps of this process have been guided and informed by the advice and wisdom of Indigenous peoples. And so I think Dr. David Newhouse, Dr. Dawn Laval Harvard, members of the Cheney Wenjack School for Indigenous Studies, and the First Peoples House of Learning for all of the amazing work they do in advancing education, supporting our students, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, in finding their path forward. And so please extend a round of applause and thanks to all of those people doing that good work every day. So we'd like to show you what we've created together to honor this treaty and traditional land. And so I would ask Elder Doug Williams, Knowledge Keeper Ann Taylor, Chief Emily Wheatung, Dr. Leo Grock, Dr. Stephen Stone, and Chair of the Board Deborah Cooper-Berger to join me to unveil the rock. And then we will ask Ann and Giriga Migizi to explain the significance of it.
Today gives me great pleasure to be here. I've had a lot of association with Trent personally. I went here, I graduated here. So far back, in fact, that I remember the fields that were here before Trent was built. And the reason is because we replanted this old farmer's field with the pine behind us. I took part in that when I was in high school. And so anyway, that's one incident where I was involved. And then the next one it's kind of funny, back in about 1961, 62, I got hired as a 20-year-old. Oh, now you know my age, I can't. Yeah, I shouldn't accept the fact that you can't read. That's my academic bias. Academics can't read. Anyway, back there, I started working with a bricklayer on Champlain College at that time. I hated the work, but it gave you a couple of bucks in your pocket. But that's another involvement I had with Trent. And the other one was back in about 1964, I think, Trent started operating as a university. So I knew the president personally, like I knew this young fellow. And so we were talking even at that time about having a First Nations studies thing going on, right? Then I also made friends with Ken Kidd, who was instrumental also in doing this. And what was happening at the same time down in the U.S. was that there was a Black Studies program going on. So that attracted the ears over here, right? And including the First Nation people that were attending here at Trent University. So they started first, I think Indian Eskimo Studies, they called it at that time, back in 1969. I was one of the first ones there. So that's what I'm sort of following my trail in terms of where I went. I mean, I did go to other undergrad programs before that. I went to Nova Scotia. I went to St. FX. I went to Thunder Bay. Got back home to Curve Lake. Finally ended up at Trent. In those years, we started in 1969, and so beyond that point, the studies program, Indian and Eskimo studies, they called it, became a department, right, in the 1970s. And thanks to some of the professors that still are hanging around, can't seem to get rid of them, but they helped form this program. I mean, there's some individuals who worked hard at it and so on. And even today, there's a lot of people who work hard to keep Indigenous studies here at Trent, and it's very much a prominent part of this program. I did ask my helpers, I said, shut me up if I start rambling around and so on. But one of the things that I'm just going to swiftly change to the topic of the day. We've worked hard at getting the Michi Saagiig Anishnaabeg recognized at Trent University. For some reason or another, it has been omitted. That's just sort of like the First Nation over the hill was omitted at Trent for a long, long time. It finally came around. It finally got recognized. It was recognized by the administrators and leaders and so on, almost long before our First Nation people did, or the Indigenous Studies Department. You can't see any sign of any Indigenous, Michi Saagiig Anishnaabeg signs or identification or anything like that. I'm working on them. They better watch around the corner when they come in at Native Studies corridor, right? I'm kidding. Don't get scared of me now. So anyway, I would really like to thank the committee that put this together and also the university that was open-minded to it. Very big thanks to Julie Davis here, who worked hard on this and seemed to understand what we're trying to do long ago. Now, we had a clan system here which identified families in the old days, right? Maybe perhaps like you're identified as Jones, Smith, etc., etc. I don't know. But the way we identify families is through these identification of birds and so on mainly. There are some, like fish and animals, right? There's the odd tree. The odd tree in Ontario, actually, as an aside, you'll see at the far end, which is the oak tree that's laying down like this. And we're the only other nation in Ontario, really, that has it. So you have the 5 family symbols, if you want to call them that signed the Treaty of 1818, which made it possible for you to come into this territory and settle. That's why we call you a settler, right? You've been here a long time. I'm not going to say you have the right to be here, almost. Again, don't let me scare you, but. So anyway, these are the symbols of the people that signed this treaty with the colonial government that made it possible for you to settle here. So this is very, very significant. But people of Southern Ontario are weak in being taught this in their schools. Let me plug that in again. The 5 symbols are here, that are here in this area is an eagle, which is a very strong symbol. Okay, below it is the caribou. Remember, the caribou is here, still in Ontario, right here, when the settler arrived. Right? The Ontario Woodland caribou was here. It's now disappeared. Next to it and below it, and this, it's hard to see there probably, but it's a crane. Crane is also one of our symbolic leaders. We remember some of these individuals from 1818 because of the oral stories that we carry. I carry personally a lot of those stories. So we have a crane, and we have me. The fish clan, I'm fish clan. And next to it, it's a snake. And next to it, up there, I described before, is the oak. So those are the 5 clan symbols that are here and represent this area, and they symbolize their agreement with that treaty in 1818 with these symbols. We came along and we thought, we'd sit around one day and said, what are we going to symbolize these people with? Because nobody ever mentioned this, and so on. So here you are at Trent University. We really appreciate this. I'm one of the rare Michi Saagiig left that speak the language, where there's only about 50 of us. So it's good for me to see this, and I really appreciate all the work that has been done with all people in regards to generally the Indigenous Studies program at Trent University. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Doug, and Anne has helped us along the way with the translation. There will be plaques installed. They're right now on the boards, on the easels that you can read, that explain the dotems, the clan symbols, and the treaty, and it is translated importantly into Anishnaabeg and revitalizing that language and sharing that language is so important. And so it's really important that we showcase the language along with that teaching. So this is a very important way for us to recognize the treaty and traditional territory and to deliver our mandate of education and our work to provide places that celebrate and commemorate Indigenous peoples and educate members of the campus about where we have all come from. We have plans underway for a garden that will honor those who did not survive the residential schools, and we'll be working with the Elders and Traditional Knowledge Keepers Council to choose a place that's accessible for all members of the community, a location that is close to water to encourage healing, calm, and reflection, while having enough access to good sunlight so that the plants may thrive. So that will be something we hope to unveil in the spring. So before we close, I'd like to share that I've come to understand, that reconciliation truly is a journey, and sometimes we're walking alone with our thoughts and our reflections. We're often joined by others who help us learn along the way and guide us along that path. There are sections where we stumble and fall, and at times we look ahead intimidated about how far we have to go. And then importantly, we look back to remind us of why we're on that path, and a large part of today is about looking back and understanding why we're on this path. So I would like to invite Lorenzo Wheaton, Che Mirkmich, knowledge keeper, good father to Emily and her siblings, and grandfather, to close with a prayer.
Creator, Yamnidu, Miigwech, for being here with us at this time. Creator, and Miigwech for all the fine words that were spoken. And thank you for the cold to remind us that life isn't always comfortable, and it was never comfortable for the people at a residential school. The chill that we feel now is nothing compared to the chill that was felt by the children at residential schools. Creator. Well, thank you for bringing a little bit of that chill to us today, so that we might use it to fuel questions in our mind, to fuel the answers in our minds, and bring us together so that we can do something when we leave here. That this time, Creator, is not just spent listening, but it's spent initiating thoughts, actions, and many more things. I'd like to thank you all, each and every one of you, for being here to be a part of this. And I want to thank you for considering what happened in the residential schools as recently as I was a young man. I am not a survivor of the residential school, but I kicked my way and fought my way through the day school program. And so I'm here today giving this prayer in English because I don't know my mother tongue. Miigwech.
Miigwech, everybody, for being here, for joining us on this incredibly important journey, for coming together on this path. We invite you to come and look at the display, read and learn, share with others. This is a day of reflection. We have a website, trentu.ca/truth and reconciliation, that provides some really important resources. Share that with your friends and family. This is a time of education, of healing, of strength, of resilience. I think there's some celebration in there amongst all of the feelings that we have today. And I certainly feel that this is a community that supports each other, supports the Michi Saagiig community. If you'd like to join us, we do have refreshments under the tent across the road. Be safe, reflect, honor the tragedy of the residential schools, honor the resilience and the spirit, and walk on this path with others. Miigwech.